What's up, guys? Welcome to a semi-controversial video. Let's hope half of the reptile community online doesn't start hating me after this. Alright, so recently I've had a few different questions about my setup back here, what's going on in my room, what kind of snakes I have, things like that, how I know how to take care of them properly. For those that do not know, I have a pinstripe ball python right up here. His name is Louie. And then I have a false water cobra. He's about 6 or 7 months old in this tank right down here. His name is Winston Alexander the Fourth. Don't ask me Louie's name, it's too long. So today I'm going to be mainly going over poor snake care, even for beginners, versus like great snake care. I'm also going to be going over mainly if you should be moving your snake to a different enclosure when you're feeding it, things like that. So let's start with the basics. We'll talk about a ball python in this video. I will address false water cobras in like a future video or something for all those that, want to know some information about them. They're pretty cool. So for the most part, ball pythons should be kept in a 20 to 40 gallon tank. They can be like in a 20-gallon tank when they're younger. It's debatable whether you should keep them in a 10-gallon tank when they're really young. That's up for debate, I guess. But it's really best for them to be in at least a 20 or 40-gallon tank. Right now, Louis is in a 20-gallon tank. He's under a year old, and he's, I would say about 2 feet. I haven't measured him in a while. So once you get the appropriate size tank, I would say your next concern is bedding. You're going to want to get Reptibark or Eco Earth, or you can use like newspaper bedding and sometimes even aspen bedding, but I would never go with cedar bedding as well as sand. Those can cause either impaction if it's sand in different reptiles, and it can cause respiratory issues for both types of bedding. Once you've gotten your bedding set up, then it's time to move to lighting. I don't care who you are, do not use a basking light for your snake. You will burn it. So, if you shouldn't be using a basking light for your snake, what do I use then? You should use an appropriately sized heating mat for your tank. They range in sizes from 5 to 10 gallon tank sized heating mats to even like tanks that are like 80 to 120 gallons. I have the 40 gallon down here for Winston. He has an appropriately sized 40 gallon heating mat that takes up this half of the tank, so that if he wants to be in like a hot environment, he can. If he wants to go chill, he can. Don't at me about the dying plants. It's kind of January in Florida. I'm working on it. They're surviving. So what do you want to use for lighting is the next question. A heating mat is not going to put off any light, and you don't want to go with a basking light because that can burn the back of your snake. I would say use an LED light if you're going to go with a heating mat. Once your snake gets burnt, it takes either a very long time to heal, or it can get scars and burn marks that don't ever go away for the rest of its life. So what I have is I have an LED on this tank and on this tank. You can see the one LED I have on this one. It lights up the tank completely just with that one, and that is a Thrive lamp fixture actually. You can get them at PetSmart for decent prices. So the next thing is decoration and water bowls. Make sure you have a decent sized water bowl because snakes don't often just put their head in it. A lot of times snakes will actually just either put their entire body in it or just like swim around in it. Winston swims around in his bowl all the time, like all the time, but he's also a water snake. Louis just kind of gets in it, sits there for a second, drinks his water, and then he goes back to sleep because he's a lazy boy. Dog barks. For other things of decoration, you want at least 1 or 2 hides in your tank. I have one hide down here for Winston because he's a little baby. Plus, he hides a lot underneath this back plant that I have. You can't see it in this video or in this frame, I don't think. But you see that little wooden stump right there? He hides underneath that because there's a plant right behind it. For decorations, I would say, unless you go about like really cleaning them and going through a decent process, I would not get anything from outside. I would mainly go to any pet store, or you can even order some things online that are safe. And for the water bowls, I would recommend using spring water. Do not use distilled water. And if you don't know whether your tap water is safe or not, you can get ReptiSafe water conditioner or just continue to go with things like spring water. All right, time for one of my favorite topics. Feeding a snake in a different enclosure. Should you feed your snake ball python or not, I don't care. This can be used universally for snakes. I have a slightly venomous snake on my bottom shelf, and I feed him the exact same way. One of the most controversial things in the snake community or reptile community, as far as I've been able to tell, is if you should feed it in a separate enclosure. I say no. And we're going to go over that right now. So, there has yet to be any real evidence on whether moving your snake from one enclosure to another for feeding actually changes any aggression levels. My opinion is, if a snake is going to be more aggressive whenever they're in a feeding enclosure or when they're being fed, then they're either going to bite you when you go to take them out of their feeding enclosure, or they're going to go more aggressive than normal when you even bring their food into that enclosure. The other main issue with moving them to one enclosure, and this is a pretty big issue for snakes considering it can take weeks for them to get over it, is you should not be handling your snake immediately after you feed them. Oh, my snake has great digestion. I don't care. For your snake's well-being, please do not pick it up after you feed it. They have very sensitive systems and their defense goes down right after they're done eating. If you pick up your snake after it's done eating, it could regurgitate what it just ate, which damages their throat, and that can take around 2 weeks to heal.
If I have a second enclosure and I feed snakes in it, then I can keep them in it for a couple of days.
1. If you're going to completely set up a new enclosure for feeding, that's a waste of money, first of all. Second of all, if you're not going to set up a completely set up and good enclosure for them to live in for a few days after they digest, and you're not going to spend the money on that, then they would be in a non-viable environment that is not good for their health and well-being. Keep them in the enclosure, you go in, you feed them, and then you're done. Don't move them around, you might get them sick. I think the last argument for keeping them in their normal living tank for feeding is that they may ingest their bedding, like wood chips or dirt and things like that, and it might digest, or it might affect their digestion or respiratory or whatever you might want to think from it. Snakes live in the wild where they can eat loads of things. They're not really going to get that injured from an occasional little tiny wood chip or a little bit of dirt. Don't quote me and say that they can eat just a load of crap, but they're not going to die from a wood chip or some dirt. So if you guys have any questions or any suggestions or even any ideas for a next video I should make on snakes, I'm thinking about making a future one on false water cobras, feel free to leave a comment. My boy Louie's hanging out with us for the ending of this video. What's up, dude? He's just kind of hanging out. He's cool. He doesn't do typical snake things like hanging around your neck. He just kind of does his own thing. He's pretty great. He's my best friend. But I hope this helped you guys out. If there's anything I missed, let me know. Hopefully, if there are any questions about differing topics of snake care and what to do of bad care versus good care, then I could have helped in any way. You can always use Google as your friend. I always like to refer to other YouTube channels such as Go Herping and Sneak Discovery whenever there's any questions that I have or any things that I'm not very confident about. But if you guys enjoyed, feel free to subscribe, hang out for my next video. Thanks for watching. Peace.